Hello everyone, I hope you all had a good start to 2023. Today's video is going to be a quick look at a palette I recently bought from Jackson's. It's the Frank Herring Crescent palette. If you've watched any of my painting videos, you know that my favourite palette is made by Frank Herring also, so had quite high hopes for this one. Looking at the outside, both sides are the same. It's made from the same hard plastic as the Herring palette I have. It's raised lettering saying Frank Herring Dorchester Watercolour palette. There's two hinges. They're larger than the ones that are on my Herring compact palette, and as you can see they have stoppers to keep it flat when it's open. The hinges do feel quite strong actually. They've got like a metal bar through them, and they're quite stiff, at least when they're new, so it stops the palette flapping around. I'm not a huge fan of this clasp. I mean, it does the job for now, but it doesn't feel all that sturdy to me. I'm not sure I'd trust it not to burst open while packed in a bag. I'd probably put an elastic band around it to make sure it stayed closed. So now opening up the palette, you have 12 half-pan-ish sized paint wells and 6 pretty small mixing areas. The diameter of the palette is 175 millimeters. As you can see, there's a thumb hole in the center. It makes it quite easy to handhold. Though the mixing areas are pretty small and not much good for larger brushes, they are nice and deep. You see here they're about 1 centimeter deep, so it's pretty good for mixing a wash. I was disappointed to see that the paint wells don't fit half pans. Even these small Van Gogh paints don't really fit. I did find out later that a pan will fit if you force it in, but I don't recommend that as it's not so easy to get it out again. As for beading and staining, well, it is a brand new plastic palette, so of course it is going to bead and it is going to stain. There is a few ways you can lessen the beading on a new plastic palette. I've seen some people use a scouring pad to lightly scuff the mixing area. Some have even told me that toothpaste can help too. I never tried it though. I tend to just wash the palette and just use it as it is. Eventually the beading goes away. As for staining, I just use a white magic sponge to remove the stains and no problem. So how is the palette to actually paint with? Well, it's mostly good. I do like the deep mixing areas. I think that's one of the best things about the palette. It's nice to know that any watery mixes you do are not going to go everywhere. One thing I did have a slight problem with though was the thumb hole. And while it is pretty comfortable to use, I did keep splattering paint all over my thumb. I know it's not that big a deal, but it was kind of annoying. Having 6 mixing spaces was also quite nice. Though I don't tend to use that many mixing spaces as I like to mix my colours on top of each other. It is always nice to have the extra space if you need it. This is probably the 4th or 5th painting I've done with this palette, and as you can see the paint has pretty much stopped beading now. As for staining, I was quite surprised that it wasn't all that bad. I mean, the paints I was using was Van Gogh, Phthalo Blue, Gamboge, Quin Rose and Payne's Grey. There was a little staining from the Phthalo Blue, but yeah, not as much as I thought there would be. So all in all, it's a pretty good painting experience with this palette. So this is the palette after cleanup. I just scrubbed it a bit with a magic sponge and yeah, it got rid of the stains and it's almost as good as new. So what are the things I like about the palette? I quite like the solid build quality and that it's quite compact, or at least it is compact for a 12 well palette with 6 mixing areas. I also liked the deep mixing wells. It's much better to mix in them than the small metal palettes you get with most brands. The things I didn't like, well, I suppose my main gripe is that it doesn't fit half pans. So you're either going to need to get the paint out of the half pans, or you're going to have to use tubes. It's a shame because it would have been nice to be able to swap pans in and out of the palette, but oh well. Okay, so that's the end of the review. I would recommend this palette to those who like to paint with smaller brushes and just want to try something different. I personally still prefer my Herring compact palette, as it takes full pans and I can use larger brushes. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Bye bye.